back.
to have you back, exactly.
Yeah. And it's still Nigeria Decide Studios. Of course, we have been monitoring the elections all day. Apparently, this is about 35 minutes.
And we've definitely touched on almost all of the 29 states from Imo, Anambra, a whole...
literally everything. We also talked on the, the serious hotspots where the issues, and mostly, I think the most uniformed issue is the low voter turnout. There's been a high level of voter apathy. Of course, a few issues with the card readers. We've also had issues of timeliness for INEC staff. But aside from that, it seemed to have gone really peaceful.
And the voter turnout cuts across the different regions.
All across the country.
Rivers, you look at Maiduguri, you look at Lagos, you look at... It's just a pretty poor situation. And just like the Southwest Coordinator of Transition Monitoring Group said, well, for Lagos status at the last election, the turnouts were somewhat at about 18%, but doesn't anticipate we'll see even reaching 15%. Now, joining us to further discuss on all of this subject matter, we have with us Ihechukwu Ibeji back in the studio. Thank you very much for staying back.
Thank you very much.
And we also have Mr. Martin Slumber as well joining us live. Now, you were
Thank you very much.
behind the scene and listened to the conversation we had earlier on before taking the short break and having you in. Now, Mr. Suleiman said, well, he would also allude or go along or lean with the report of the international observers that so far we've had free, fair, credible elections, and we can safely term 2019 as such, getting such elections, despite it being fraught with a little bit of irregularities here and there. What's your thought on that? And are you surprised that a domestic observer still has that sort of impression?
Well, I was surprised, and I'm still shocked that coming from an observer, to me, he sounded more like an establishment man, perhaps a staff of INEC. That was the impression I had. But in fairness to him, I haven't had the opportunity of coming to the studio on election day today. I observed the streets and also haven't voted today. The impression will look like, everywhere is peaceful, everywhere is dry, everywhere. It is easy to say that nothing could have gone wrong. But like I said the last time I was here, most of these things happen behind the scenes. So, but on the surface, it looks like, all well and good. But I totally disagree with his position. The elections of February 23rd, even as we speak, if we understand the meaning of elections being conclusive, we know that the elections for 2019 February 23rd, as we speak, they are still inconclusive, even though a winner has been announced.
Yeah, Chukwu, you seem pretty much heated up with the response as well from the Southwest Coordinator of the Transition Monitoring Group when we were discussing the issue of the presence of children at the polling unit where the president was. Looking at all of the footages and feeds that we've had from across the Federation, we didn't see any images of children in sight, but that from the northern part of the country, doesn't that also raise a question in your head to say, couldn't this just really spark a little bit of interest, saying that possibly underage voting went on here?
Okay, so first, before I touch that question, please, I'd just like to crave your indulgence. It would be very nice to know the indices upon which these observers used to reach the free and fair. It would be good to know the indices.
Well, they say that's why fraught with irregularities. They are going to tender their recommendations to INEC and ensure that the needful is done to make necessary corrections.
And so go ahead and declare free and fair. Okay, now that aside, I think that I'm a bit shell shocked, if I may, at that footage I saw where you have children around the polling booth, and I could see that around that polling booth it was clear that the electoral process is going on around there. And I think I'm a bit more shocked because this is the highest office, the paraphernalia of the highest office of the land there. So there should have been people who should have people who were around there who should have, even if those children were starstruck, to come to greet their beloved president. There should have been people there who should have kept them a distance away, until he leaves from that position towards that side, because it gives a different scenario. It gives a different scenario that the children were involved in the process. Even though that is still, that is not exactly what it is. They would not. The footage did not show them actually being involved.
But it just raises that red flag.
It just raises that red flag in hand. So just as we saw other footages, and look, there was none of such scenes there. It would also be important that the people around there, the electoral officers, now it is their duty actually to ensure that those children are not around there. So I think that is also something that the electoral body should look at.
And quickly, gentlemen, now we're also talking about the collation process. So far, some centers have started collating results, and some people are already computing their details and saying, okay, party A won this area and party B won that. But he says it doesn't anticipate that would have the announcement of the governorship, the next governors across the states within the next 24 hours. Would you be surprised if we have to wait another 2, 3, 4 days, just like we have in the presidential election?
Yeah, I will be very dishonest to say that I will be surprised. One, this is Nigeria. We do things upside down. We take delight in, if you like, dramatizing everything, so I won't really be surprised. However, ordinarily, even by maybe later tonight, we ought to have the results, we ought to have a winner declared. Mind you, this will not be the first nor the last, perhaps, where we'll have results being declared 2 a.m., 3 a.m., so we might as well just maintain the tradition. Maybe around 2 a.m. we'll just declare the winner. In Lagos, especially with the reports we're getting that the turnout has been low. So what exactly will you be collating? If you can count
you
these
heard
things,
today saying that the late night release usually has some mystic parts
no,
that
get
help
the point.
massage
Yes, it is possible, but you see, if there is no delay, and like we have always said, most of the time, it is expected that at every polling unit you have your result. As far as that result has not been tampered with, I mean, for goodness sake, if maybe within my locality there is supposed to be maybe a local government chairman or maybe a councillor, at least the units from which those votes will come to tally will not be so vast. So if my friend who is in some other district, another district, I should have an idea of who is winning. So by and large, night has become something else in Nigeria.
Party agents will be signing to confirm that the collation of the results was done under a proper environment. Do you think in their submission they would raise issues again after signing and appending their signature and saying, well, everything went well?
It is their responsibility to ensure that every issue that they face, they raise it even before they sign. And at the point where a party agent raises that, sees a discrepancy or an issue and goes ahead to sign, then it's their loss. It's their loss. They are beholden by duty. It is their responsibility to ensure that every issue that they raise there that has to do with any discrepancy, if they are not able to solve it, if it has to do with vote counting, if it had to do with the printed ballots, and that they feel that the counting was not done properly, it is their duty to report and not sign. But once you sign that result sheet,
I raise this question because we've had instances whereby the total number of votes cast were much more than those who were even accredited.
Yes.
And they signed those individuals, party agents appended their signatures.
Appended their signatures, not minding the disparity in those figures.
I think it has to do with a lot of awareness, awareness creation amongst them, a lot of, if I may, they were just going along with the flow. Because now what they have just done is that they've armed the other party with evidence to say to them, if they take it to court, that you know what, but you are aware of it.
Who is to blame this time around? Because some of these party agents, they send their men to the field, and some would say some are not as intelligent or smart to understand how these things work. So it's until they now send whatever computation of results, and the team behind, just like the situation room, now does the calculation and say, hey, no, within this area, this shouldn't be, and you should have raised a flag, but it's a little too late, I've appended your signature, and a winner declared over there.
It is absolutely the top. The team at the top that is to blame, because their duty to deploy the right agents to the different polling units. Now, let me give you an example. Now, in terms of INEC, if you look very critically, you see that a lot of states had issues. Some states had issues, but some states that had issues were well managed, well contained. It has to do with the posture, the composure, all right? And it has to do with the ability of the REC to manage those issues.
Yeah,
so it's the same thing with the agents.
The party agents.
The party agents.
It means the party is responsible for
Absolutely.
people who go there. And if the party sends someone who probably does not understand the process, the party is at a loss.
At a loss.
Nobody would tell you if there be any discrepancies or any mistakes or anomalies. See, we made a mistake, but shall sign. So if you make that mistake, it's on you and
Absolutely.
on the party.
Absolutely. Look,
But then
every election,
INEC has a responsibility to check, cross-check. I mean, for some people, it was funny that we were announcing results that were over or much more. The numbers were more than the number of people that registered and voted at a polling unit. And people laughed over it, and we literally glossed over it and still went ahead to declare somebody a winner. So it questions the whole process from top to finish. Are we really ready for credible, free, fair elections in this country? Or are we just, you know, somewhat dancing around the top?
Let me bring up something I brought up here. When we are ready to bring up electronic voting, collation, and announcement, then I think we're a bit ready. Do you recall when we brought up the card reader issues? When it was brought to the Senate, there were issues around, will it work? What about network issues? What about this? What about that? What has happened today? It has been deployed. I heard the observers say this is even an improvement. That means that it's being improved. So if you don't launch something, how do you know it will not work? So as long as we want to restrict it, we want to sustain this manual issue, deployment of logistics manual, our costs will keep going up. The budget was over 200 billion. Discrepancies are still here. A lot of the issues we faced at the last elections, we're facing it now. Electoral materials were swapped from state to state, even if it's by error. So what electoral materials are you going to be deploying on electronic voting?
Should we not be, Mr. Lumber, advocating, because we all talk about evils, he sounds all great and dandy, but if we are sitting here and just making those points and saying, oh, let's do this, it will work. If we don't do this, it's not going to work. Who's going to push? We push for all kinds of things. We run to the streets, I mean, whether the crowd is paid or unpaid for, but people show up in protesting or in protest for the most ridiculous things in this country. There's NSAS, oh, keep SARS. Wike must go, no, Wike must stay. We have those ridiculous things that people go out to protest against or for. But when it comes to issues like this that would affect us, there is a bill that is lying on Mr. President's table that could have one way or the other helped the process this year. Well and good. We have gone through this process. We've come to an end. We have 2023. Do we wait till 1 year to 2023?
Do you think the president will still give excuses for the electoral?
Well, let me start by saying that the card reader on the 23rd did not recognize any of my fingers. The card reader did the same thing again today. So
but you later voted?
Yeah.
How?
You know, which one is how? My name is there, my photograph is there. Any attempt to deny me that vote, the president will come and...
the card reader...
No, the card reader, get the point. The card reader recognizes a family member, which is the card. The card reader actually has no business with my finger in the real sense of it. Till tomorrow, I don't understand what the card reader is doing in this electoral process. To be honest, my impression is that it is a scam, and I can prove it. But be that as it may, the truth for me, if Nigeria wants to get it right, we need to do simple things. how difficult is it for me to go to a place and appear as a stranger and people will say, come, we don't know you? It's not a difficult thing. As far as there are witnesses in any place, a stranger ordinarily will find it difficult to vote to start with.
I don't think that would
No, just a minute,
work.
just a minute. Apart from what you have in the register, if a stranger comes, whether it's underage, whether it's overage, whatever, once a stranger comes, the people that are there will say, we don't know this person. And by the time they look at the register, the person's image is not there. They on their own will arrest the person and hand over to the police. It is simple. This idea of, just a minute, this idea of let us do it this way, they say that the shortest distance within any 2 points is a straight line. All this going like this, turning like that, that is what has led us here. That is what has made my fingers that I used to eat eba not to be recognized by some machine that they say is an improvement. The one that was not an improvement, immediately I put my finger there, one hand, it was excellent. So you see, me personally, I have personal grudge.
So what are you insinuating, or what are you advocating for? Are you saying we should stay in the manual era?
No, it's not about manual. Or what does a machine do for you? It simplifies. Get my point. A machine is supposed to simplify. But in Nigeria, a machine makes a process very cumbersome. If the machine is not even cumbersome, what they will do is to create a scenario that will make the machine impossible to work. How do I mean? All this idea of doing collation at night. Edo election, what happened? People were gathered, they were doing collation. All of a sudden, it occurred to certain people that, you know what, these lights have to go off now. And they took the light. Which machine will work in that circumstance? And the next thing they said, you know what, everybody go home, let us continue tomorrow. And by the tomorrow, of course, all the figures had changed. And the next thing you hear is, if you are not satisfied, go to court. You don't have to sign. For goodness sake, these things are simple. If you follow a process, we say, you know what, you have to move from A to B to C. My physics teacher in secondary school, he told me something. He said, the reason why we say 1 + 1 is equal to 2 is because they are positioned the way they are in this order. If we change their positions, it will be mathematically correct to say 2 + 2 is equal to 1. Do you understand? So it's all about convenience. If you are doing something scientific, for goodness sake, it is supposed to simplify. I don't really get this idea that you wait 3 days to get a result. How many are we? How many people participated in the election?
Okay.
This is something you can calculate with your fingers.
Going forward,
Look,
wow.
see,
Do you know how many we are in this country? Going forward,
we've had so many projects in this country that has been digitalized, that have worked. We've had the BVN that has worked, and when it came for implementation, all Nigerians fell in line because it touched on their pocket, and you need that BVN for you to have a bank account. So the rural person you're talking about, he got it. We've even had the populist program, Trader Money, that has worked, and it had to do with registering your name on the system at some point, and it worked. We've had the ATM card process. At the end of the day, they know that it's the easiest way to get money on Saturdays. What happened? It worked. No, we've had NIN, we've had the identification, national identification registration. Everybody fell in line. Did it not work? It worked. Even the photos that they have about us.
Did it work?
Oh,
because
yes.
some people are yet to get there.
The only part about
that,
the major part about that, I said specifically the registration itself. I did not talk about the production of the identity card. That's another matter. But the registration, people fell in line, and they got registered. Now with these forms that has our faces on them, are the INEC polling units, are a product of what? Digital system. Because they have your faces, you registered, it has your name, in fact, it's your card that it was printed out. So what are we saying now? It is no more time, there's no more time to waste over the Electoral Act. The Electoral Act, I believe, should be one of the first things that this administration would definitely look at, inshallah, by God's grace. And look, it's very easy. The president currently is not involved in the process, right? So he's a neutral person. So this is actually the time to look at that Electoral Act, tweak it, and improve on it. And I think I hope that one of the things that should be looked upon is this electoral voting, electronic voting.
Do you think
collation.
that would become law as the president kickstarts is turning.
If
into the second term.
if he tweaks and sends back, and there's a back and forth, and there's a robust debate, and it is passed or ahead of time, it will become law. He was sent on that bill.
Mr. Lombard, quickly, before we wrap things up, going forward, as we get ready, because at the end of every election year, it's time to prepare for another election year. I'm talking about INEC here. I asked the people we need to, reorientate ourselves, prepare our minds, because 4 years is, once you get a year into that, the first year or the first year of the term, I mean, you're literally counting down. What lessons should INEC learn going forward? And we, the people, how prepared should we be, looking at the voter turnout and all of the things that have somewhat incapacitated this election? Yeah.
Very, very quickly, you see, one thing about electronic voting, about all this digital stuff, like we said or we agreed earlier, they are supposed to simplify things, but Nigeria is a funny place. You bring all of these things, even when you go to the ATM, you see some joker will just spend like an hour. What is he doing? He's checking balance. For goodness sake. In Nigeria, no, just a minute. In Nigeria, they can frustrate some of these things. We brought in GSM, and for some reason, all of the NITEL cables started to disappear. You can't run a system like that. You can't run a country like that. So let us not be too optimistic. Indeed, the digital age is best for us. Electronic voting is best for us. But let us not be too enthusiastic, knowing the kind of people that we are. For the government, they should start the process as of yesterday. They should start. Then for us, let us be able to stand down on anything. A simple process, let us be able to stand down on it until we get something that is simple, right, before we go digital. Have you seen people use phones that they don't understand? It is when you have seen somebody is taking a photograph with the phone facing the other end, and you ask him, what are you doing? He says he wants to take selfie. That is Nigeria for you.
Well, that was how ladies were taking their pictures in those days before we now have the front camera.
Exactly.
Okay, quickly, gentlemen, do you anticipate that the strongholds of the different political parties, that the tides might change, the pendulum might swing in an unexpected direction? Some people have said, well, we should no longer be thinking of strongholds, but we know how familiar that term is, and well, politics, anything can happen, but we could almost predict what would happen across the different states.
Can I tell you that traditionally, South-South is PDP. Why it is so, I cannot tell you. Traditionally, in fact, for the Southeast, it is like, it is a religion that it is either PDP or Anambra, let us leave Abga where it is. That is how it is. So if you say upsets will come, I will be more than shocked. However, I can tell you that with the kinds of reports we are getting, some upsets may happen by force. And that is where there will be issues. These happenings by force, I mean, take a place like Rivers, take a place like Bayelsa. These are oil-producing states.
Rivers, there's nothing that can necessarily happen because a stronger competition.
Can I tell you something? Something happened in Imo State under Obasanjo's regime, where they brought, I want to believe, was it Ikedi Hakim?
Or Hakim.
Yeah,
Under
he
PPA.
belonged, yes, but they had an arrangement. Just come in front of the cameras as PPA. Immediately we finish this process, you come and join us. You marry this husband after the election. So these things happen all of the time because we're not a serious set of people. Meaning that even when they bring an unpopular candidate, because they want to get this particular place by force, the results will just appear the way you have been seeing. So
I mean, in all of the politicking we've seen across boards, like, we know that there are strongholds. And we saw the margins between the
3.9
APC
million.
and the PDP and the rest of them. Do we not necessarily see that the tide might change in some places? Or, and again, do we not see Nigerians changing, moving camps, like the politicians also, deciding to you know, try something new other than the same thing that they've been used to.
This is the election where the true definition that politics is local will really play out here. There are certain strategic states where the people have I mean, like a state like Abia State, the people have looked at it and they will be voting on the lines of performance. I will be gobsmacked if certain states will not have a few upsets. And you could see...
For example, like Abia,
yeah.
we see the former Diamondback...
Alex Oti, Dr. Alex Oti,
you know,
Abga.
he alleged that his mandate was stolen,
at
and
the
he's
last
going
election.
back again on the grounds
Yes.
of the, I think, Abga.
Abga.
So do we not see some
Those
form
are
of
some of the-
shake up?
Exactly what... look, let me be very frank with you. He's running on the strength of performance, and he's bringing out his record as a performer coming from a financial institution. And at that last election, he gave it a good run. And this time around, he started on a good momentum. So these are the states that we should watch out for. We should watch out for keenly. It will be preposterous to state here that there may not be some upsets. It will make the whole thing more exciting, because what we are hoping for ultimately is we get the best candidates across board. So yes, I am looking forward to a few. Strongholds will be maintained largely, but a few upsets. And you could see the indication from what the ruling party APC did. Immediately after the presidential election, the president started to visit strategic states. The VP started to visit strategic states. They campaigned strategically in certain states. So you could see that there's an interest to ensure that maybe the apple cart is tilted a bit.
Do you think the probability of a shake-up in Lagos would happen?
Very, very unlikely.
I don't see that. Quite frankly, it'd be good to see how the head-to-head results will eventually end up, but it's unlikely.
But looking into the future, let's act like we have a crystal bulb in front of us.
We are playing pundits now.
Do you think that there will be a change of, you know, there will be a shaking up after this election? Because you're saying there might not be a likelihood of power changing hands, but do you foresee that in the next 4 years? Change
in what sense?
Well, because you already said that there's not going to be any, you know,
No, he said there will be some changes
in the margin
with the states.
In some of the states, certain states.
And
no, we're talking about Lagos. We're talking about Lagos.
In terms of, look, Lagos has run with the performance of its governors largely over the years, and that performance has stuck out. And you see, one of the things that appeals to the people, aside structure is first for every political party's performance, and so far, to a certain extent, the people have appreciated that performance. It is remaining for any party, any serious-minded party that will want to take over power, to push forward what it has to have. So it has to have a strong candidate. So for now, Lagos has a ruling party on board because they have the structure, they have the performance, they have the pedigree. So any party who is serious to take over from them would have to come out with a very, very solid candidate, first and foremost, and then give it a shot. But for now, I don't see that.
Let's not push it.
That's looking into my personal. That's looking into my personal crystal ball, right?
Well, well, the results are yet to be announced. The collation is still ongoing. We'll only hope that the results could come out early tomorrow, maybe midday tomorrow.
That's less than 24 hours to go, and Suleimana said, well, we shouldn't be so optimistic.
But let's just hope that a miracle happens, and then maybe somewhere midway tomorrow, you might see those results trickling in.
Miriam, once again, we didn't get to vote, but we've gotten the chance to be able to talk about all of this.
This is the life of a journalist. We're essential service, so we always have to be here giving you first-hand information.
Which is one thing that electronic voting will help sort out.
At least we get a chance to also cast our votes.
Absolutely. And play your civic responsibility, your civic duty.
We'll watch and pray and see what happens.
Thank you very much for staying with us, Ihechukwu Ibeji, and it's also a pleasure having you, Martin.
Thank you so much.
Very much, gentlemen.
Pleasure.
And Marianne, this is where we draw the curtains for this particular segment.
Of course.
I'm David Alabi. Many thanks for watching.
And I'm Marianne Nicole.